Hold on a second, Scott. I am not minimizing. Just because I'm putting facts on the table doesn't mean that I'm minimizing the deaths of anyone.
Both sizing it.
I am. No, it's not called both sizing it. It's called information. Okay. Information is okay to consume. Like, it's fine to say that it is both bad that Christians are being killed and also it is bad that Muslims are being killed. Are you able to say that?
In today's video, Abby Phillip goes head-to-head with Scott Jennings on CNN's Newsnight in a fiery exchange over Donald Trump's comments about the escalating violence in Nigeria. Abby Phillip wastes no time challenging Jennings, calling out the dangerous simplicity of Trump's narrative and highlighting how portraying the crisis as a one-sided genocide completely ignores the truth that both Christians and Muslims have faced devastating attacks. As Scott Jennings tries to justify Trump's selective outrage, Abby counters with facts, context, and a breakdown of the political double standards in Trump's so-called humanitarian concern. Let's break down how Abby Phillip completely dismantles Scott Jennings live on CNN.
This is kind of typical Trump fashion. He reacts to what he's seeing on television. But in this case, promising American military action in Nigeria over this issue where his facts are not even really lined up with what is happening on the ground, it's perplexing.
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of things to point out. One is that the president has, part of his charm to a large number of the American public is the fact that he reacts on the go. But this is also part of the problem, right? Why are we finding out about potential foreign policy from a Truth Social tweet or Truth Social, whatever it's called? Why are we finding out in this way? Why is the president making decisions in this way? Why aren't we having larger conversations behind the scenes about very serious accusations in foreign policy? The second thing is the reality is that on the ground, violence and really explosive violence in Nigeria isn't limited to Christians. It's something that is actually kind of cross-cultural, cross-religious. If you look at the bare numbers on the ground, you find that Muslim Nigerians are also experiencing the same level of violence, if not higher.
To that point, this is from the Associated Press. There have been a number of attacks, 20,000 deaths out of 11,000 attacks. But of those, 385 attacks were targeted against Christians, resulting in 317 deaths. But in the same period, there were 417 deaths among Muslims in 196 attacks.
I don't think you can minimize this, Abby.
No.
There's been about 100,000, upwards of 100,000 since 2009.
Hold on a second.
7,000 this year.
Hold on a second, Scott. Hold on a second, Scott. I am not minimizing. Just because I'm putting facts on the table doesn't mean that I'm minimizing the deaths of anyone.
Both sizing it.
I am. No, it's not called both sizing it. It's called information. Okay. Information is okay to consume. Like, it's fine to say that it is both bad that Christians are being killed and also it is bad that Muslims are being killed. Are you able to say that?
Here's what I'm able to say. Upwards of 100,000 Christians in Nigeria have been slaughtered. It is a genocide. The same people who are worried about the Middle East have nothing to say about this.
Scott,
there's
just 1 second.
7,000 deaths this year,
Hold on a
35
second.
per day.
Scott,
it's
hold on a second.
I care about both, and it is wrong that either of those things is happening in the first place. Empathy is not a zero-sum game. We can care about both. And the answer to the question that you were just asked,
So are you against the president intervening?
The question that you were just asked had a simple yes or no answer. And you decided to drag it on.
I don't want anyone to die, but I'm telling you right now, Christians are being systematically slaughtered, and they have been for years, and nobody cares until Donald Trump.
People actually in Nigeria are pointing out that, yes, Christians are being killed, but so are Muslims. Muslims are also being killed. Let me give you another anecdote, and I'll let you get in, Penny, because I know you want to talk. But a Nigerian human rights advocate specializing in security and development disputed Trump's claims, telling CNN that they reflect a dangerous oversimplification of Nigeria's complex security crisis. Yes, these extremist groups have sadly killed many Christians. However, they have massacred tens of thousands of Muslims. He noted that the group's attacks on other civilian locations, such as markets, bus stops, and refugee camps, disproportionately harm Muslims. No one is minimizing the deaths of any person, including Christians.
What really stands out in this segment is how Abby Phillip and David Hogg keep steering the discussion back to what Nigeria experts have been warning about for years. The reality is clear: the violence in Nigeria is not a one-way Christian massacre, it's a massive national security crisis affecting both Christians and Muslims. Reports from Nigerian human rights organizations, Data, and Amnesty International all show that extremist groups like Boko Haram and ISWAP have killed tens of thousands of Muslims, largely because many of their attacks target majority Muslim regions. That doesn't downplay anyone's suffering, it simply reflects the full truth. And that's exactly what Scott Jennings refuses to acknowledge. Reducing Nigeria's conflict to a one-sided narrative only fuels more division, something Nigerian analysts have repeatedly warned against. That there's another layer here too. If Trump was truly committed to protecting persecuted Christians, his administration wouldn't have cut refugee admissions to the lowest numbers in modern history. In 2020, the U.S. accepted fewer than 2,000 African refugees total, so this sudden outrage doesn't exactly match his actual policies. Abby and David are just insisting on a consistent, fact-driven understanding of the crisis, and that's the only responsible way to discuss an issue this complicated.
But when Trump is saying that he's gonna bomb a country over the genocide of one particular group while ignoring the disproportionate killing of another group in that same country, it just doesn't logically make a lot of sense.
I think the way he knows about this is through the U.S. Commission on Religious Freedom, who has been discussing this because, surprisingly, and I was surprised to learn this, that the number one group of people that are killed for their religion are Christians around the world.
Okay, well, we're talking about Nigeria.
Well, and in Nigeria, 82, and for 22 to 23, 82% of those murdered, and it was a large number, and it wasn't just Christians, 82% were Christians. It is the Christian churches that are crying out, and we've been ignoring them. And so I'm grateful that we're having this conversation. And yes, of course, we need to save lives. I'm pro-life. I want to save every life. And so we can be in favor of saving the innocent from Islam fascists who are murdering them. And it's not just happening in Nigeria. It's happening in Niger. It's happening in other countries in Africa. And it's got to be dealt with. And I am so deeply appreciative that President Trump is taking this on very publicly, because we have got to take this seriously and finally start talking about it.
Well, look, I think everyone is right. I mean, I hate to say it, but Christians are being persecuted. They are being killed. That is true. But it is also true that Muslims have been killed in the country, right? And so, yeah, like Boko Haram is, a big problem there. First of all, you have a genocide that's been going on in Sudan. You have almost 1 million people between the Ukrainians and the Russians that have been killed. You have what's going on in China and the Uyghurs. By the way, there is a lot of bad stuff going.
By the way,
correct. That's right.
Being killed and persecuted by the communists. You know who's the biggest threat to Muslims? Communists.
But your premise of the question, Abby, it's a little strange. Like John Bolton got arrested, but somehow Trump has adopted his foreign policy. So there is a fight in the Republicans between the isolationists, which is a growing wing of the Republican Party, and Trump's foreign policy, and they are different. Trump has decided to intervene in some of these areas. By the way, I'm not necessarily against that. The United States has to have a role in the world, because if we don't, China will fill that void. Every time we withdraw, which is why Democrats were fighting Republicans when we started withdrawing foreign aid around the world, every time we withdraw, whether it's dollars or presents, China is coming in.
What Representative Jared Moskowitz is really emphasizing here, and what actually matters, is that the crisis in Nigeria is far more complicated than the one-dimensional narrative being circulated. Independent data from organizations like ACLED and the United Nations makes it clear that extremist groups such as Boko Haram and ISWAP have attacked anyone in their way. In some of the worst massacres over the past decade, Muslim communities were actually the majority of victims, particularly in Borno and Yobe states. This doesn't lessen the suffering of Christians, it shows that both groups are facing widespread devastation, and any U.S. response must reflect the entire reality, not a selective version of it. There's another major contradiction Moskowitz is pointing out. If Trump wants to portray himself as a global protector of persecuted Christians, his record simply doesn't match that claim. His administration slashed refugee admissions to record lows, including for African Christians escaping the same violence he now claims to be outraged about. And at the same time, he pushed to fast-track refugee status for white South Africans based on a disproven genocide narrative. That inconsistency is exactly the problem Moskowitz highlights strategically. He's also correct. when the US pulls back, China quickly fills the vacuum. That's already visible across West Africa through infrastructure deals and growing military cooperation. Moskowitz isn't dismissing anyone's pain, he's arguing that the US needs facts, consistency, and smart policy, not impulsive threats built on incomplete or misleading narratives.
And filling that void.
One question that I have, considering that Trump is very concerned about persecution, is he going to extend refugee status to Christian Nigerians the way he extended them to white South Africans based on a very much disputed and arguably false claim of genocide in South Africa?
That's a great question. I think we're going to unfortunately find the answer to be a massive double standard, unless I stand to be corrected.
I don't agree with that at all. I think
so. He's going to extend
perhaps, I don't know. I haven't had this conversation with him at all, or anyone.
South Africans,
perhaps,
Scott,
perhaps also.
Or is it just white people who get special status in Trump's? Literally, the bar in Trump's new humanitarian policy is being a white South African. That is the preference that he is giving to certain people.
The bar is not being a criminal.
No. What about the black Christian Nigerians? Are they going to get special status?
I don't know.
If they're being persecuted?
I don't know, but here's what I do know. Right now, the topic of the day is whether we are going to intervene so that these people wouldn't need refugee status.
But hold on. So we are going to bomb Nigeria, but you won't say that Trump should... We're going to bomb radical
Islamic terrorists.
You won't say whether Trump should offer them the ability to leave Nigeria if they are being...
Well, I think the first answer would be, let's keep them from getting murdered in their own
So why
homeland.
is that not the answer for South Africans, who, by the way, are not the victims of genocide, white South Africans?
Oh, well, they are certainly the victims of mass violence.
They're not the victims of genocide. Would you not agree with that, Scott?
Well, I mean, I can argue over semantics, but there's absolutely been violence committed against these people.
It's not semantics. It's now policy. It's government policy. The Trump administration is saying they're the victims of genocide, so because they are white, they get special privilege.
I disagree with your characterization. I think in the case of
so
Nigeria,
what's the policy then?
The policy right now
but Scott,
is the country of Nigeria needs to keep
But if you disagree with me, then why? I mean, am I wrong that was not the policy that the Trump administration announced publicly?
Yes, but you're ascribing only racial motivations to it, and you're minimizing the violence that community has faced.
Because what's the definition of the people that they're going to allow in from South Africa? By definition, they have to be white in order to qualify.
Well, by definition, they are facing violence, murder, and all sorts of mayhem.
Well, look, I mean, Scott, listen, if you think I'm wrong, I would like you to present other evidence. But
well, you're saying it's only racial. I'm saying it's because they're facing violence in their own home country.
Well, listen,
and murder.
He's not saying that any.
But you're also saying they're facing.
He's not saying that
Nigeria.
any South Africans can come to the United States. He's saying only the white ones. I didn't say that. The State Department
that specific population is the ones who are facing the violence.
Yeah,
in Nigeria, you have radical Islamic terrorists who probably do need to be bombed a little bit.
Hey,
I agree with Jared.
It's a race-based policy in South Africa. I'm curious if Trump will extend that same grace and preference to Nigerians who he claims are also facing persecution. We will see.
What Abby Phillip is really highlighting, and what completely reframes this debate, is that America's refugee and humanitarian policies cannot shift depending on race, political narratives, or who benefits from the storyline. And when you look closely at the record, the pattern is impossible to ignore. During the Trump administration, refugee admissions from African countries were dramatically cut. According to the Migration Policy Institute, arrivals from Africa dropped by more than 70% in Trump's first 2 years, even as violence in Nigeria, Cameroon, and the wider Sahel region continued to intensify. At the same time, the administration moved to expedite refugee consideration specifically for white South Africans by elevating a genocide claim that South Africa's government, international monitors, and human rights organizations all confirmed was not grounded in reality. This wasn't a minor policy decision. It showed the State Department prioritizing a disproven narrative while turning away black Africans escaping real, documented extremist violence. And that's exactly why Abby Phillip questions the double standard. How does one group receive special treatment while another, facing far higher rates of attacks, can't even get recognition, let alone protection? When it comes to Nigeria, the facts are equally clear. Reports from the UN, Amnesty International, and the International Crisis Group all show that extremist violence does not target only one community. These attacks hit Christians, Muslims, and ethnic minorities across multiple regions. So if Trump now wants to cast himself as a champion for people facing persecution, then consistency matters. You can't call for military action in a country while refusing to say whether you would even allow its most vulnerable citizens to seek asylum. Abby isn't turning this into a partisan argument, she's demanding fairness, factual clarity, and a humanitarian policy that applies to everyone, not just to groups that fit a preferred political narrative.